like this, or?
Yep, just like that. Collar can go on. And now this collar we might have to cut, but we're gonna put it on there. And then we're gonna put the plate on and level it. And if we can't level it, we'll have to take this back off and cut that. But fingers crossed, it's just gonna work. A little bit towards the window. That on the thing. Level across here and then use this to push this side to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby. So the platform is level. I have it screwed off just temporarily in 3 spots with my 1-inch reveal along the floor so that the tread sits nice and flush with the finished floor. And then I'm using this clamp here off of this tread to push this side up so that it's level, and that'll tell me what this spacing needs to be. And then I can cut this collar to fit in there. So you can see, like right now, it's too big. So I'll go and cut this now. All right, we're going to install, I'm going to show you guys how we install the balusters. So there's balusters here and balusters here, and then there's a different type of baluster to go in the corner, but we'll get to that later. So for now, we're installing these balusters, and this is also how the treads get locked into place. So while we're installing these balusters, we're gonna level the treads and align them correctly and set our set screws. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna stab our baluster in and get some hardware in it and just temp that hardware in place. So it gets a carriage bolt, a flat washer, and a lock washer. So I'll get that in place, and then I'm gonna slide the baluster all the way up. And I'm in the bottom hole right now. So I'm leaving this one empty for now. I'm just pulling it all the way up. And then I'll tighten that up a little bit. That's snug. And then I'll stab my hardware in up top. A flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut. Now before I tighten this one though, we're gonna level the tread out. So we've got our 2-foot level there on the tread, and then I'm gonna skip a tread and then get the second tread down from it, kind of position it right there, and then get a clamp in pusher mode. They always have to go up. Very rarely do they have to go down. And I'll put that there, and then I'll just jack this up.
That's good right there.
Until it's level. And then I'll go a little tiny bit past it because it will sag a little bit.
Yep.
And then before I tighten this, Brian can put the level on this baluster in this direction.
That's good that way.
And then I'll snug this up. And then the last thing we need to do is get the treads aligned like this. So to do that, he can pull on that baluster and move this bottom tread a little bit. So he'll pull on that until it's level, and then until that baluster is straight up and down. And when that baluster is plumb in both directions, then the tread is where it needs to be, and I can set the set screws.
Yeah, that's good.
The set screws are an Allen key, and they like to strip out real bad, but they're kind of a pain in the ass, so I just put them in with a T25 on an impact, and it works pretty good most of the time. You just gotta go slow and be careful with it. It makes a big difference to start them by hand instead of just trying to run them in with the impact. And then you just rinse and repeat that process all the way down. For the middle three, there's 3 balusters in the middle. I'm gonna pull a number here, which is 40 and 5/16. And then I'm gonna pull this number. So from same tread to the top of this next baluster. This one's a little bit tricky to pull, but you guys are good carpenters. You guys can figure it out. Call that 49 and 9/16. So the balusters want to sit down into these pockets here, which is 3/8 of an inch. But I'm gonna add 3/8 to both of these. So one thing I want to clarify here is I've pulled my number for this baluster and my number for this baluster. Those are given by the fact that they are where they are, right? So there's tread here, and then this baluster goes down and attaches to this tread here, right? So we need to get numbers for baluster here, a baluster here, and a baluster here. So now that we got these numbers, we can go ahead and just do the math to figure out what 3 evenly spaced balusters are here, here, and here. If you have trouble with that, I don't know what to tell you. Figure it out. So one thing to keep in mind, I'm going and I'm double checking my baluster heights and double checking my math on the other treads. And here I'm running into one that's reading 40 3/4. So it's high, but I have space in the slot to move it down. It's high because we had to jack this tread up a lot to get it level, but it's okay because there's still room for this one to slide down. Because I can slide it down in that slot and I can slide it down in this slot down here, I'm good. I can just cut my balusters all to match that one, and when I get to this point, I can just slide this baluster down to match. Okay, so for setting these balusters, it comes with this little guy, which is, I guess, bike making stuff technology. And these get driven into the end of all of the balusters. And to do that, you need a special tool that you can buy online.
or you can just make a little thing. So I just hog that out with a Forstner bit with a hole right in the center, and then a like carriage bolt that comes with the staircase kit. You can just use one of these. So what you do first is you take this. This is going to go on like that, right? And the baluster plug thing wants to go in like that. So just set that guy right there. Slide that on. So it's in there with that orientation. So the bubble or the bulbous side is facing up inside of the hole. And then thread this carriage bolt on just so that it's just barely flush with the outside of the bulb there. And then you set this on there, give it a couple of whacks. So that's getting there. It's still could go in a little bit more. I'm just gonna risk it without the block on there. Yeah, so you just want it just barely below the lip of the baluster. And you can kind of give it some of these tappies. You're just trying to get that to be perfectly-ish straight up and down. So that's getting pretty close. Take your screw, thread it in all the way, just like that. And your baluster is ready to go. And then you'll just do this with a whole pile of balusters, and then take them back to your staircase and install them all.
All right, so now we're going to install these balusters. It's really quite as simple as just put them in the hole and then thread them in. And it'll pretty much self-center itself. Just run them all the way in until it won't go in anymore. Try not to strip it out. Sometimes they get loose. That's bad, but it's not the end of the world because the handrail will hold them in place very well. So, situation like this, it's tight, but it doesn't quite want to line up. You just gotta be a man about it. Just put it where it wants to go, just like that. And this is kind of just to do it by eye. You're just trying to line up this top plate, imagining that handrail sitting on it, running all the way up. Then we have a couple of blocks cut that are 3 3/16, I believe, but double check it with yours. But they're set so that they just barely fit down here, holding that right where that wants to be. And the purpose of this is to hold these balusters parallel with each other. So we'll bring this up here and we'll get that Velcro on as tight as it can. And that'll hold these two balusters parallel, and we'll do that on all of them going up, and that'll keep all of the balusters locked together while we put the handrail on.
And you want to be under the...
Yeah, and you want to be under these little L brackets, so that way you can slide them down to get your drill up in there when you're going to attach your handrail. All right, for this last baluster here at the very end, you need to cut that custom. And what I've been doing for that is taking my taping measure, right? And it's in this position, but just down there. So we already know what that number is. It's 40 5/16. So we want it to come up 40 5/16 from this tread here, and then just drop your tape down here. Get that number. In this case, it's 9 1/4. 9 1/4 plus 40 and 5/16. 49 and 9/16. Add those together. Cut it. I already cut this one. And then you'll just drop that on in there. And that's it. Bolt it on, level it out, drop some screws into the floor. Are you recording now, Brian? So we're gonna bend the handrail now. We got all of our balusters in. Everything's nice and planed out. So the first step is figuring out what the diameter of the coil is that we have to bend. We want to shoot for about 1 foot larger than the diameter of our staircase. So our staircase diameter is about 66 inches. So we want to shoot for 78 inches. So we'll go ahead and draw a 78-inch diameter circle on the ground, and we'll use that as our reference for when we're bending our handrail. Now we got a nice, beautiful circle on the ground, and that'll be our reference point for bending the handrail. The next step is actually bending this handrail. There's a couple of little handy things that'll make this easier. One of them is drawing that circle out on your ram board if you can. And the other is going to be leaving this plastic on and putting some reference points on it to help you evenly bend it out. We're going to go ahead and just put a nice tight wrap of tape on here. Pull it pretty tight so it don't move around on you. And then we'll use our little marking zip tie. Put a little mark 18 inches up. Rotate it. Put a little mark 18 inches up. Making sure the tape is nice and tight so it don't slide around on you that much. It'll move, but hopefully not that much. Alright, so now it's time to bend the handrail. This is really just a slow, methodical process. The slower you go, the better your process is, or your product is going to be. So this is where this tape comes in. I'm going to stand on the first piece of tape, and I'm going to give it just a little bit of a bend, barely any. And I'm going to rotate it, stand on the next piece of tape, and do the same thing, trying to keep the amount that I'm bending it exactly the same as the previous bend. So just little tiny increments all the way around. All right, so now that we got our handrail looking pretty much right on our line all the way around, we got to make sure that it's oriented correctly. So this changes based on whether or not you have a left hand up or a right hand up staircase. This one is a left hand up staircase. So we want to make sure that this side is down and this side is up. Does that make sense? Right, because we're gonna stretch this out and we want to make sure that the left hand side is on the bottom and the right hand side is on the top. Video and act like I know what I'm doing.
Act like it was your idea.
Yeah. So now we're gonna expand the handrail out to approximately our rise, which is about 9 feet. So we're rotating it, we're putting it on a piece, and then we're doing a little spread, about a little less than 10 inches.
Yeah, this one's looking pretty good.
All right, let's take it up and do a little test.
Are we backwards?
All right, now we have our handrail just mocked up here. It's not perfect, but this is pretty workable. It's looking pretty good for the first, I don't know, quarter of the staircase. And our radius is looking pretty good. And then up here, it kind of dives up and in a little bit, so we're not quite big enough, but that's okay. This will work out as we get this fastened in. This will be able to expand outwards and downwards pretty easily. So I think we're good to go ahead and start zip tying this on. Out there, but make sure you get the heavy ones. You don't want the shitty light ones, because we'll break them. So I'm gonna go ahead and just throw a zip tie on here just to hold it for a second and crank the shit out of it so it's super tight. And then we're good to go ahead and pull the plastic off now because we don't need the tape marks anymore for reference. Once we start having to force the handrail on, then we're going to want to start bending the handrail a little bit more in place. So far, we're looking pretty good. So I'm going to do these next two, and then we're going to do some bends to get this to... Alright, so I'm going to hold this real good, and then Brian's going to bend out a little bit up there. Yep, that's good right there, Brian. And now I can get another 3 zip ties on. So you can see now that this is fastened on, it's looking pretty nice and smooth and helical. But up here it's starting to die in. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna hold this as good as I can, and Brian from way the fuck up there is gonna bend out a little bit. Just a little bit. Yep. That's probably good right there, Brian. Let it come back in a little bit. Yep. And now you can see these next 3 here are lining up pretty good. Even a few more. Yeah. These still want to bend out a little bit. As you can see, this baluster here is level, right? So that's where the plane wants to be. So maybe we will take this out just a little bit more. So I'm gonna hold it real good. Brian's gonna bend a little bit. Okay, that's good. Okay. I'm gonna throw 2 zip ties because this baluster we know is nice and level because it's one of the main balusters. Nice and plumb. So I'm gonna zip tie these 2 quick. All right, go ahead and bend a little bit more, Brian. Up and out. Okay, stop. Nice. Good. Okay, so now after that bend, that got us quite a ways now. So I'm gonna throw zip ties on pretty much all the way up to Brian's hand there. All right, so we got our spiral staircase handrail zip tied on all the way up. One thing to note is you wanna make sure you leave yourself plenty of extra on the top and bottom. Otherwise it makes bending the last little bit kind of a pain in the ass. So make sure you leave yourself at least, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet on the top and bottom. You should have plenty of extra, as you can see down there. So get it all zip tied on so it's in your nice little helical spiral going all the way down, trying to avoid as many flat spots as possible. And that's about it for that. So now that we have our handrail zip tied on all the way up, we can go ahead and have one guy start pre-drilling. I find it's best to put a, what is that, an 1/8 inch bit on a right angle pre-drill, and have another guy with a drill. And
It's also useful or helpful to not get whoever's pre-drilling, don't get too far ahead of whoever's putting the screws in, because
Yeah.
it will shift a little bit as you work your way up. So just do like 4 or 5 at a
stay
time.
try to stay 3 or 4 ahead of the guy who's putting in the screws. And we find it's better to use a drill than an impact because these screw heads like to break off, and if they break off, it's a total pain in the dick. So be super careful not to break these screws. They kind of suck. So sometimes you will, unless you are a god, you'll have a little bit of gap in some of these. And right before you screw it in, if you just put a clamp on it, you can close that gap up. Give it one more. Yep, just close it up with a clamp, just like that. And that's about as good as you're gonna get, and then the screw will go in there and hold it. So put that in your toolbox of little problem solvers. We'll probably do the same thing on this next baluster up here. Here we see Brian, staircase master, preparing to install a staircase bolt. All right, so we have this issue here where this bracket doesn't quite line up with the handrail. You just take your Knipex, give it a little tweak, and now it lines up nice. And then this wants to be centered underneath the handrail. Just take a little clampy, pull it over until it's nice and centered. And we'll pre-drill that and send a self-tapper into it. All right. So for cutting the excess off, I like to go 3 inches up from this spot here and 3 inches up from the bracket down there. So, and then make a ring of tape, and this ring of tape will help us cut the handrail perfectly square to itself. So 3 inches. This isn't a super exact science. Right about there. And the trick with the tape is to make sure that the line that you're cutting lines up with itself. So as I wrap this tape around, I want that line, this piece of tape, to line up perfectly with that spot. So right like that. And that way I know that this line will be perfectly straight, square to the rest of this rest of this handrail. So I'll put that there. Take my porta band. You do this with a hacksaw if you're poor. There you go. Pretty money. All right, so one of the last things we're gonna do is put on this railing here. Pretty straightforward. Have a guy hold it level up top, throw it on with some quick clamps. These should hold it pretty fucking good. Throw some 1/4-inch holes through there, slap these carriage bolts in and tighten them up. Just making sure your guy keeps it level up there while you're doing that. And try to keep an eye on this reveal. And if it's wonky, maybe split the difference between level and this reveal looking nice. There you go. One other note on installing this wooden tread right here is that you do have to drill your own holes for these screws. And 4 to 6 screws nicely spaced on there is about all you need to go to do that. Just making sure that this is where that measurement is critical, that 1-inch measurement for setting this platform so that this planes out nicely. That's important, so just keep that in mind.